Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the Supreme Court's decision to greenlight on an emergency docket basis the Texas redistricting plan that is designed to produce count 'em, five more seats in the Congress for Republicans. To cut to the sort of headlines here, this is it has all the features that have made the court's emergency docket so pernicious. Its reasoning is threadbare. It gives a blatant leg up to the Republican Party. It's a straight 6-3 split of the conservative supermajority and the progressives, who have a very persuasive dissent that gets them and the court nowhere. And it just indulges and it kind of blinkers what was pretty clear that happened on the ground. And all of this, 5 seats, there's jockeying throughout the country, and there will be, including different maneuvers by the administration to get a little advantage here, a little advantage there in a razor's edge Congress. People think the Dems have real tailwinds going into the midterms, but if the R's can, kind of whittle a little here and grab one there and question the one in the third place, can they cobble together a way to blunt a putative Democratic majority? That's the game that's being played, and that's the game that the Supreme Court greenlit in its decision yesterday. Let me give you briefly what the Supreme Court said. Justice Alito with a separate opinion, and then the court overall. It is no surprise, not very illuminating or rich in its reasoning. What they basically say, and recall, this is a mid-cycle gerrymander. We haven't been having those in the past. It's only at the beginning of a 10-year cycle initiated by a census. Here they do it mid-year, and they draw 5 seats that everyone understands. This is not the debate, even though the majority makes it seem like it, are for partisan advantage. The question is whether they did so by making race the predominant factor in the line drawing exercise. So the majority says the district court, which has, as I'm going to explain through the Kagan dissent, a really comprehensive, elaborate fact-finding trial that they just basically ignore. The district court, they say, failed to indulge the presumption of legislative good faith. So this is some kind of principle. We see this in some of their executive power opinions as well, of a thumb on the scale, because of course legislatures wouldn't act in bad faith in the voting area. And by the way, if they do, but it's not race, we can't review it anyway because that's a political question. So that really does already kind of very much tilt the game in favor of, complete violations of what still remains of the Voting Rights Act. And then second, they say, we didn't imply clear error analysis, as the dissent says we should have, to this factual finding of what happened, because really it's a misapplication of legal principles. That's the argument that the court puts in place. And it's not a final determination, but it's as good as a final determination, because they just cut the knees out from the district court ruling. And now it means going forward, it will be this map. Texas can use its new map, and that's the whole ball game here. So temporary, permanent, just doesn't matter. All right. What did Justice Kagan say in dissent? So first, she just goes with the whole, bizarreness of what's been happening in the country. It used to be that these things weren't done in mid-cycle. And here even, Texas was considering it, and it just didn't get off the ground. And then they got this forceful letter from the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice, which is supposed to be nonpartisan, basically pushing it to do exactly this and setting out actual proposed lines and the like. And that was what, as Kagan lays out, what really prompted this effort. Okay, once it happened, you had a district court that produced a 3,000-page factual record, witness after witness. It assessed the credibility of each in a way the Supreme Court just denies, but it's the whole reason we have district courts. And it said, okay, look, it divided its citizens along racial lines to create this new map. And the evidence, I haven't been through the 3,000 pages, but it seems very clear, and all the more clear by the DOJ letter. They were basically maybe thinking that the prohibition that's still in place under the Voting Rights Act that says you can't do things by race absent a compelling demonstration that you need to correct, remedy an extant racial dilution of the vote. You can't just use race. They completely did, the DOJ and Texas, I think, too, just accumulate or amalgamate, I guess, the racial issues and the partisan issues, because as, Kagan points out, look, nobody is saying that they didn't do this, these Republicans, in order to get 5 Republican new votes. In that sense, it is a partisan project, but it's really clear under our law that you can't do a partisan project by making race the predominant factor. If you sit there and think under the current law, there's, that is in some flux with an opinion to come, but not till June from the Supreme Court, you say, what's the best way we can really make new Republican seats? I know the Hispanic vote down in the southwest of Texas is going Republican. Let's really draw things, and very punctiliously and meticulously, on the basis of race. And that's how these exquisitely carved new districts, that's the total engine for what they did and what they're doing. So, and that, if that's accurate, as the district court said, and there's no doubt here, that would be a racial gerrymander. That would violate the 14th and 15th Amendment, absent a showing when it happens, as in other states, it's because you need it in order not to dilute the vote of certain races. That's clearly not the case here. So, as Kagan summarizes, the plaintiffs, they didn't contest that politics motivated the redistricting scheme, or that it made Republican legislators glad to vote for the map that eventually developed. They didn't try to show this was invidious racism. Rather, it was race, the plaintiffs argued, that gave the redistricting plan life, says Kagan in a memorable phrase, by enabling state officials to present it as a legal necessity rather than a partisan gambit. There's no compelling state interest for imposing partisan advantage. So Kagan points out, Texas doesn't try to justify what the district court said by saying, well, we needed to do this race-based under the law, we needed to do a race-based gerrymander. It just says, race-based gerrymander? What race-based gerrymander? This was just about partisanship and wanting to get more Republicans in there. And the plaintiff said, nonsense. This was, sure, they want more Republicans, but it was exquisitely sensitive to race. So as Kagan points out, the district court just had to make a factual call. Was the plaintiff's race-predominated account, this is how they did it, accurate, or was the state's race never entered the picture accurate? And, the record is very strong. The state legislators just don't really understand, I think, the difference even, but they were given, including by the Department of Justice, a sense of here's what you need to do to get these 5 Republicans, do it by race. And That's a factual question if that's was what it was. And the district court really made meticulous findings and a long trial, et cetera. So Kagan's, basic retort here is, come on, guys, that we have district courts for a reason. They're the ones who know to make factual findings. It's sort of in a swipe. The Supreme Court ignores them by saying you should have presumed good faith by the legislature. How exactly, when the record is very clear? They just use race as a proxy. So that theme, by the way, is a just consistent one across their shadow docket. They just, completely bulldoze district courts and factual findings to the point where district courts and courts of appeals have been actually, murmuring their discontent in however you do it in a polite way to the Supreme Court. And Kagan makes a very strong case. That's what they did here. Okay, so I think you have a case in which through shadow docket, they basically just ignore a very strong factual finding that this was a racial gerrymander and therefore in violation of law, even if it was done to secure partisan advantage. And again, if it had been done on that basis alone, the Supreme Court wouldn't touch it now under its current law, where it just says we can't even think about that. It's a political question we won't wade into. So sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it now stands 5 big seats, not a small gain when you're talking about the current makeup in the Congress and especially the importance of kind of breaking the logjam. So a bad use of the shadow docket, again, with bad and fairly big potential consequences, and another kind of complete bulldozing of what district courts on the ground had done punctiliously and in a way that's supposed to be respected. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.